Hello, and welcome back to my desk yet again, this time for technique assessment number 3, if I'm remembering correctly. And we're doing it on the project about cylinders and shapes and all that sort of good stuff. So, I'm going to include a picture as part of the project during my mid-project review. But for now, let's just get it started. So, interesting about this is I took it at my desk, like I take most things, and as you've probably noticed by now, my desk kind of has built up portions, like framing it, and so that creates a pretty interesting picture here. So we're going to start by building that kind of like frame. So you have the back of the desk itself, right there, and then we have kind of a like section of desk itself. That's like almost a plank wall, and I didn't draw anything there. That was just me touching my ruler. And this kind of plank wall creates some interesting, I think anyway, some interesting design elements there. So there we go, that's kind of my rough wall. Now when I do it in my actual assignment, I'll have to make that a bit more pronounced. Actually, I'll just do that now. Widen my angle a bit here. And boom, now we're talking. That is a wall, if I've ever seen one. I'm gonna add in just quickly the 3 screws there. This is gonna be pretty rough, but I think I'll try to make it look at least kind of good. Also, this wall is way too far in, but we'll work on that perspective later. I kind of caught these elements in the background, and they weren't actually meant to be in the shot. It was kind of a mistake, but I actually kind of like them as they add a little more depth, and you know what they say, one man's trash is another man's treasure, so wow. Okay, so that's enough playing around with background elements. Let's get into the meat and potatoes of what we're doing here. So I'm actually going to start out with the 3 big cylinders in the back, purely because I started with the record last time and I kind of threw off my perspective real weird. So we're going to start with the candle. I'll tell you a bit about each of the things as I go along. But this candle I just kind of stole from my living room. I was running around my house looking for cylinders for this project, and I saw this candle just chilling there. So I grabbed it and quickly put it back after I was finished with my photo. What I like about this candle is like the gradient stripes in it, which I think will make for a pretty interesting final design. And it has this kind of like, right here, it has this kind of like cloth thing, and it like ties off at the end here and falls down, and it has this little tag on it. And perfect. So this particular candle casts a shadow kind of like this, and what is really interesting with how my desk frames it is it actually casts a shadow onto this wall here, which I really like. Don't mind me not blending my shadows at all. You may find when you're drawing this light the blending doesn't work really well, and it just gets your fingers all gross. So after that candle, it's a little too low. Raise it up a little bit. Like I said, I kind of threw my perspective off immediately with how far out I made this wall, but that's just something I'll need to fix as we go into the final project. The next thing, which is going to be real interesting, is this little piece right here. And this I got in a little set of these guys. They're for storing beads and whatnot, like craft beads. But what's interesting about these guys is they kind of got like a lot of lines in them, and they're clear, which is going to make it pretty interesting, I think, from like a shading and project perspective, but I'll just kind of like rough it out right now. Also, even though it's clear, this thing does not show through, so we're going to erase that. The only thing that shows through on the photo is just a little bit of color. And I think that's going to be pretty interesting from the shading point, but as far as the shadow goes, it casts somewhat of one, but it's really light and really small. Probably because it is clear. Up next, we're going to do the little container here. It's actually a container for soup I bought from this like convenience store looking thing that's kind of inspired by Japanese convenience stores of all things, called Daiso. I got it in Texas, and I thought it would look pretty cool. Has all these little dots on it, those nice dots. Boom, 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 boom. It cost me like $3. Okay, now I'm gonna move on to first erasing the inside of my desk here. Perfect. And next I'm gonna move on to this thing, which there's a funny story about this. This is actually a part of a lock, if you believe it or not. My dad's a pretty big hoarder, and this is part of a broken lock that he kept. And it kind of has, it's kind of wider at the bottom, then it gets shorter at the top, and then it gets even a little wider. Not really, that looks a little funky right now, but I'll make it look a little better in the actual, that's a little wider, there we go. That's a little better, I think. I'll make it look a lot better in the actual drawing, but for now, let's just keep it in there. And that is also way too wide at the top. I think that's what's really throwing it off. There we go, that's a little better. Alright, cool. That one's going to be hard, but, you know, we'll roll with it. Now I'm going to add the big one, which is the record. So this, story about this is this was one of my dad's records. I don't know what it was for. It's definitely not a normal sized vinyl, but he actually broke it. You can kind of see in the picture, and I'll add it in here. It's got a crack in it, and so he gave it to me, and I hung it up on my wall like years and years ago, and I just haven't taken it down. So now we've got, it's got a little gramophone on it, which is kind of hard to draw, but I'm just doing it rough. And then there's a little dog on it. A little dog sitting here. Like looking into the gramophone. But yeah, that's not dog looking, but we'll go with it. And then it's got a little bit of a, just realized I made this thing way too short on the top, again caused by my perspective ruining wall. There we go, and it's got a big crack, just a big dark crack right there. And what I'm excited for is there's this little piece of light here while the rest of it is pitch dark, which is going to be pretty interesting from a shading perspective. Okay, after that we got coins. We got a quarter. I'll just draw the little head on there, it's kind of hard to see. We've got a nickel. It's got the kind of like building on there, so I'll just quickly sketch that out. We've got the penny, got a good old Honest Abe on there, and then we have a dime. And these guys, these guys cast the tiniest bit of shadow, but it is fairly dark, and it's cast on this side of it. Perfect, perfect, perfect. And last but certainly not least, we have this candle lid that I again pillaged from my living room and just yanked it off and took it into here. And what's cool about the candle lid is that it's got some like lower layers here, and then it widens out to the actual circle, which doesn't actually cross over my desk in the original picture, but again, I kind of scrunched up my composition here. And what's cool about this is I really like the wood texture on it, which I'm excited to implement. And it says better homes and gardens. It's actually a Walmart brand, if you didn't know. Fun fact for you there. That's their housewares brand. And yeah, so my value scales on my other one, that one was real rough to, it was just a sketch out. The other one was just to see if I like the composition, which I do on this guy. it's got a pretty interesting composition to me anyway, because I think what happens is your eye, well, it starts as the record because that's just the largest, darkest thing, and I think it kind of like moves up and curves back around, and I like the thought of that, so that's what we're going with. And after adding all my kind of just really rough, I'll use charcoal and make it look better on the final product, really rough shading, I'm gonna call that warm up. And so this is kind of what I'm looking at for the final project. I'm pretty excited about this one. The only thing I'm nervous about is I'm not really good at circles, but we will cross that bridge when we get there, and I think this one's going to turn out really good. So thanks.